Time 6 o'clock. We will reconvene our earlier meeting that we were at the travel station. And our first order of business is to elect our council president. I will accept nominations for the council president.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Jason Boland to again serve as council president.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded for Jason Boland to be the council president. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Nice try.
Oh, I see. Okay, the motion passes and Jason is our new council president, or returning council president, however you like to term that. And next up, we have the consent calendar. We have the agenda from tonight, January 13th. We have the board minute from the Planning Commission, November 18th, 2020. And I'm not sure who has their mic on, but maybe City Hall. Can you guys turn it off? We're getting some feedback. I am, at least. Council minutes, December 9th, 2020, our regular session, and deeds, the Mill Street deed adjustments.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, the consent calendar has been approved, and we'll move forward with proclamation presentation. No proclamations tonight, but we have the audit presentation by Steve Kirshner. Is he here tonight?
I am here.
Oh,
Can
hi,
you guys
Steve.
hear me? Can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can hear you.
All right.
Yes.
Well, let's see. So we just got wrapped up with the audit literally this week, and things went very well. Certainly a challenging year with COVID and everybody working from home or working away from work. It presents unique challenges in terms of internal controls for governments, for businesses, for everybody, of course. But just like with this meeting, it seems like we're all figuring it out. And from my assessment of things, everything was fine at the city in terms of internal controls. The audit went very well otherwise. I don't know if you've had much time to look at the financial statements. We really just wrapped them up today. But the city is in good financial position, in my opinion. Matt does a great job. His new assistant, Cassandra, is, I can tell you, she is spot on. That gal, between her and Matt, those guys were really helping get these financial statements just as perfect as they can be. So I can tell you that you've got some great staff working there now. I don't know how much all you guys want to hear about the financial statements. I'm certainly happy to go through details if you prefer. If not, I can just summarize real briefly a couple of different points. So what say you?
I think a nice summary of that, and then we'll be able to look at the financials this week, and for our next meeting, we can then vote on them and make sure that we've at least had time to look at them. Perfect.
So the financial statements are broken down into a couple of different groups. The government-wide financial statements is what we've been told to call them. Those are the financial statements that gather up all of the funds into two different categories, basically: the governmental activities and the business type activities. The business type activities are your water, sewer, or wastewater, and the storm drain funds, multiple funds. Those get grouped together, and then all of the rest of the funds are considered governmental activities. So those get reported on a full accrual basis, which means that we pull in all of the capital assets, including streets, infrastructure, buildings, equipment. We then calculate depreciation on that and include the accumulated depreciation in that schedule. On the schedule, the full accrual statement of net position, we also add all of the long-term debt for all of the different activities of the city. For those two groups of activities, in the fiscal year 1920, the net position, the ending balance, if you will, of the governmental activities increased by about $1.2 million, which is roughly a 9% increase from the prior year's net position. The business type activities increased by about $2.6 million, which is about a 4.6% increase from the prior funding net position rather. On a full accrual basis, which recognizes revenues, whether they were received or not. That's generally the difference between full accrual and modified accrual, which is how you budget for things. Modified accrual, we recognize revenue if you receive those dollars within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year. Full accrual, we recognize those dollars when earned. And for property taxes, which is a somewhat significant number that has a fairly substantial receivable, we recognize everything as revenue in the year that it was levied. So the total revenues for the city was just short, $8,000 short of $30 million. What we call general revenues, or revenues that are from taxes, franchise fees, some state awards like cigarette tax and liquor tax, those kinds of things, accounted for $14 million of that revenue, and the rest of it, $15 million, was from charges for services and a few operating grants related to services rendered, water, sewer, street, storm drain primarily. Of those activities that had revenues from programs, which again was $15 million, the city had $26 million in program expenses. And so that indicates that the city's relying on taxes and other revenues that are not related to service providing to cover the operating costs of the city overall. Let's see, a couple other little high points, and then I'll see if you have any questions. The city's debt decreased by a little over $2.5 million, which is just about a 4% reduction from the year before. And let's see, I guess I'll stop there. It gets into the fund information after that, but those are all highlighted in the very first page of the MD&A, which is the Management Discussion and Analysis. You'll see that on the first page of that. So any questions about any of that?
Hey, Steve, on the report, does it also have, I'm sure it does, the difference in the PPE and all the different things that COVID related? Is that called out separately on any increase or decrease?
It is not isolated out any in particular place. That's something I'm sure Matt can provide you with a report on, but in the financial statements that are presented here, it's not separated out.
Okay.
I mean, it may be that I don't know that you actually even received any of those awards before June 30th either. So,
okay.
But
okay. And the other question I had was on our emergency reserve, how is that doing?
The emergency reserve, which fund are you thinking about there?
There's a main reserve that we have that we want to make sure that we don't go below. I think
well,
it's a general
let's see.
emergency.
Matt may be able to help me out on that one.
Yeah, so Mayor, that's the general fund for the city. Our emergency reserve is around $2 million. We ended up with a fund balance, or kind of what was left at the end of the day, of over $4 million.
Yep.
So we were well above our emergency reserve.
The
Very good.
cash balance of that $4 million was $3.5 million. The rest
Okay.
of that was balance of receivables and some payables.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Anybody?
questions?
Okay,
If
Seeing
not,
none?
I will leave it at that. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions anytime, or if you want to get a hold of Matt first, I'd be happy to work with you guys in any way at all to help with this lovely financial stuff. You know, you got to be a real geek to want to do this stuff for a living, I'm telling you. So from Geek Matt to Geek Steve, we did a great job as far as I'm concerned. That's a lot of work putting this 160-page report together. It's there's a lot going on there. You guys have a fantastic, the city's financial health is great as far as I'm concerned. There is a lot of debt, but you have a lot of assets, and generally speaking, debt means that there's been some improvements being made, and now it's just a matter of paying for them. So that's a great thing.
Very good.
All righty.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all.
You're welcome. Next up is public comments. Did we receive any public comments, Kim?
No, we have not.
Okay. All right, we will move on to the public hearing section. We have annexation A2007 and CPMA 02 or 2002. Kelly Hart. Oh, I need to go into my, sorry about that. Okay, so this is a public hearing, and the public hearing for annexation A2007 and comprehensive plan map amendment CPMA 2002 is now open at 6:12 p.m. Your patience is appreciated as our city attorney goes through the required hearing process.
Good. Good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This hearing will be conducted pursuant to the quasi-judicial hearing procedure set forth in ORS 197.763. At the commencement of the hearing, we will ask any counselors to announce any ex parte contact or conflicts of interest. If you have any question about what either one of those are, please feel free to ask me at any time. We'll start the hearing now with the staff report. The staff report will be presented. It will include information which staff believes is relevant to the identified criteria from the city's comprehensive plan and land use regulations which staff believe to be relevant to the issues of the hearing. We'll allow questions of staff by city council. We'll then open it up for public testimony. Audience may provide oral or written testimony concerning issues relevant to the hearing. All testimony or evidence must be directed towards the criteria described in the staff report or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations. Please note that a failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval, if any, accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to those issues, precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. All witnesses will be asked to state their name and address for the record before you begin your testimony. We will then open it up for testimony of witnesses. We will start out with the proponents of the application, then opponents of the application, and then rebuttal if any, if necessary. We will then close the public hearing, and the hearing will be all deliberation by council. No new evidence will be allowed once the hearing is closed. Generally, a decision will be made this evening, but the council has other options if they so desire. At this point, Mr. Mayor, you may ask councilors if there has been any ex parte contact or conflicts of interest to disclose.
Okay, do any councilors wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias?
I have ex parte contact. I had a conversation with, this is Mr. Kirkley. I'm friends with his sister, and I just had a conversation about him coming before the council for this motion here.
Okay, do you feel that it will have any bearing on your decision?
None at all.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just follow up with just one brief question.
Sure.
Just, Counselor, was the substance of the conversation the hearing process itself or about the property?
No, just that I saw that the property was up for this process, and that was the end of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. Have any comments regarding objections to the notice that was sent in this case or the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider the case? Has it been received? Was that no? I
No,
didn't
sir,
hear.
sorry.
Okay, thank you. That's okay. It's Zoom. Will the Community Development Director please present the staff report?
Yes, sir. Sorry. Can everybody see my screen here?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so under consideration this evening is a proposed comprehensive plan map amendments and annexation for the property located at 955 Russell Drive, which is located on the northeast corner of Franklin Street and Russell Drive. The subject property is 3.98 acres in size, and the full width of the street along the length of the property frontage would also be annexed as part of this proposal. The property to the south and west are located within the city limits, and therefore the site is contiguous to city boundaries and eligible for annexation. The property is in a developed residential neighborhood and currently designated as low density residential. To the north and east are residential properties within the county unincorporated area, but have a comprehensive plan designation for residential low density. Properties to the west and south are in the city limits with a zoning designation of residential mixed density and have already recently been approved for two multifamily developments. And the applicant is proposing to amend the land use designation to be consistent with the residential mixed density of the other properties on the intersection here. For the comprehensive plan map amendment, in order to approve an amendment to the designation, the amendment shall be consistent with the city's adopted comprehensive plan and facility plans, including the transportation system plan. For city sewer, water, and storm drainage, there are existing facilities in Russell Drive and portions of Franklin Street. The facility master plans were designated to accommodate residential use for the area, and modification to the density of the 3.98 acre property would not result in a significant increase in capacity for the existing facilities. For transportation, according to the transportation system plan, Russell Drive maintains a functional classification of a minor arterial, and Franklin Street is classified as a collector street. For minor arterials, they typically serve higher volumes of traffic at moderate to high speeds, and collector streets serve as a critical role in the roadwork network connecting traffic from local streets to the arterial network. As such, both streets are classified to accommodate the level of traffic associated with any type of residential development. And as part of any future development of the site, land dedication may be required for the expansion of Franklin Street to accommodate a center turn lane as identified in the previous development that was approved on the other side of the street. And for the conversion of the land designation, in 2019, the city conducted a housing needs analysis to update the anticipated housing needs based on the type of development and conducted an updated buildable land inventory. The conclusion of the needs analysis identified that the city has a surplus of both low density and high density residential lands for the next 20 years. With the surplus of low density residential land, the conversion of the 3.98 acre property would not impact the needed acreage for that type of development. In addition, the proposed residential mixed density zone would permit low density residential type of development, and as such, there's no impact on the land conversion. So with that, I'll conclude my report. We have the applicant representative available on tonight's meeting, but we have not had any other member of the public request to participate verbally. We did have, I think, 3 public comments in opposition to the application provided by during the Planning Commission phase. And those were included in the agenda packet for your review as well. So with that, I'll conclude my report and answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions. Has Community Development Director received any comments on the public hearing?
Just those listed and included in the agenda packet.
Okay. And would the applicant like to speak on behalf?
We do have the applicant present.
How's that?
Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is Laura LaRock. I'm the Director of Land Use Services for UDEL Engineering and Land Surveying, and the representative for the applicant, Stephen Kirkley. Can everyone hear me okay? Great.
Yes.
Sure.
Kelly did a wonderful job providing an overview of the development proposal used in reviewing this application, so I won't repeat any of that. My testimony today will be in regards to testimony that was received from 3 of the neighbors off of Mountain View Lane, which is just east of the property. So opponents to the application had comments received about increased crime in the Mountain View Lane area and concerns about increased traffic speeds along River Road and Russell Drive near Mountain View. The opponents further questioned the proposed plan amendment based on staff's finding regarding a surplus of RM land. So I'll break these pieces up and talk to them in just a little bit more detail and then save some time for questions if council has any. So I'd like to point out that this proposal does not include a development plan. So the application is limited to just an annexation request with a conversion of the plan designation upon its annexation. So in terms of traffic, the existing single family dwelling that's constructed on the subject property is the only dwelling and the only source of traffic generation for the subject property. So therefore, the change of the city boundaries and the concurrent change to the plan amendment or plan designation, excuse me, is not anticipated to have any impacts on the traffic. Typically, at the time of development, proposals are reviewed for conformance with the Lebanon Development Code, which includes standards regarding traffic impact studies, access to public streets, internal and external transportation circulation, and public right-of-way improvements such as street widths, design speeds, bike lanes, and sidewalks. In terms of concerns around crime, I know some cities have taken a multidisciplinary approach to crime prevention. There's a program called Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. The acronym for this is called CPTED. So some of these programs are available, and the principles through which use urban and architectural design for reducing crime and the fear of crime can be used, but are not implemented at a code level. And then again, just wanted to point out that a movement of a city boundary and a change to a plan designation is not impacted or not anticipated to have an impact on crime. And further development, if and when it occurs, typically doesn't have a negative impact to the crime rate. So the last piece, when you're talking about how property is zoned, usually the city looks to their comprehensive plan with their housing needs analysis. So currently the city has an adopted plan that dates back to 2004. In the 2004, you can imagine there's a planning horizon typically over 20 years, and they're using data at that time to project what their land needs are going to be at the end of that planning horizon. On this 2004 plan that's adopted by the city, there indicates that there will be a deficit of low density RAM and a surplus of RM land. But it's important to note that these forecasts are a decade old, and at the end of the planning horizons where forecasting can become less accurate. Presently, as Kelly had indicated in her presentation, the city is considering the adoption of a housing needs analysis that's based on more current data and was completed in 2019. In this exhibit, it talks about a comparison of residential land needs versus land supply. And it takes a look at the property per zone. In this more modern 2019 plan, it indicates that there is a surplus of low density residential land. And there's actually kind of the perfect amount of medium density land. There's not a surplus or a deficit at the current time over this next 20-year horizon. One thing I'd like to point out about these studies is when you look at the housing needs analysis, it takes a look at all land within the city's urban growth boundary. And a lot of that land that you're looking at that's taken in consideration is either being available for redevelopment. You can kind of push aside. So when it's outside city limits, it really can't be developed to urban standards. So you can take out a portion of the land in the study in that area. Another piece I'd like to point out is that in the medium density residential land, single family homes can be developed as well as other housing types. So by a change for low density designation, which allows just for single family homes, it really doesn't take anything away. It just allows the opportunity for future development to occur with maybe a broader housing mix. And in addition, so I guess what I wanted to summarize is when you look at your housing needs analysis, it is a projection, it is a forecast. They do take assumptions when developing these plans, and it doesn't paint a perfect picture. So there's not an exact science into saying what's within the city limits and available for redevelopment at this stage. And if that property itself is zoned at the right density, the applicant has selected the medium density residential because it allows the widest range of uses. So therefore, if there's a need for single family residential or a broader mix of housing types, it could be accomplished under this zone. So with that lengthy presentation, I'd like to wrap it up and see if anybody has any questions that I can address.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, since there is no one on the other side at this point in our meeting, we will close the public hearing at 6:26. And it'll be up to council discussion. No discussion? Will the city attorney please read the title of the ordinance?
Ordinance Bill number 2021-02, ordinance number 2958. A bill for an ordinance amending the Lebanon Comprehensive Plan Map designation to establish the residential mixed density designation for the property and annexing and zoning the property following consent filed with the City Council by landowners in said area pursuant to ORS 222.120 and ORS 222.170. File A-20-07, CPMA 20-02, Stephen Kirkley.
Move for approval. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance bill. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay. The ordinance bill has passed, 2021-02 and ordinance number 2958. Thank you very much. Next up is the appeal of staff decision not to allow Conversion Brewery to use Strawberry Plaza for outdoor dining. This will be presented by the LDA and Conversion Brewery.
Yes, hello everybody. I'd actually, if I could, I'd like to have maybe a little bit of clarity. It wasn't actually the staff did not they said they were unable to authorize it. So in Kelly Hart's email to us on December 17th, after we had presented to council to see if we could get outdoor dining approved when council had staff look over our proposal, it was for the staff prior to us submitting that proposal. Kelly had said it was the staff was unable to authorize the use, occupancy, and permitting for a public park, Strawberry Plaza. This request would need to go before council. So that's what we're actually here to see if this is something that council would be able to allow. And with that, I'd actually like to let Matt Cowart be able to take this over since he's the owner operator of Conversion Brewing.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, so I guess I sent out some paperwork to you guys to kind of give you an overview as to what kind of regulations we'd be operating under. It's very similar to what everyone else downtown will be doing. You know, last time I came before the council last month and requested for all the downtown restaurants. We got an email saying that they were approved, but they didn't feel that they had the authority to approve our use in the park for, I guess, permanent usage, you know, more than one day, because right now they do permits for us. But so the reason why, I wanted to clarify too, the reason why we didn't ask for anything for outdoor dining on the sidewalks or any of the other available space we have, we just felt that it would be more beneficial to the public for us to use the space in Strawberry Plaza that is currently not being used in the wintertime, rather than to try to take up the space on the sidewalks or alleys or other. We have some other spaces around us that could theoretically be used. It just seemed more logical to set up our membrane structures in Strawberry Plaza rather than to kind of muck up everything else with what was there. I don't know exactly the discussion about legality of that, but I do know that it's currently available for us to do it by the day. So I would think that the stuff would be in place there for us. Basically, the way OLCC did for licensing was, if we can get a approval by the either landowner or the public, whoever public entity owns the property or is in control of it, for 180 days or less, we don't even need to apply to the OLCC for change. We have a list of rules that we need to abide by, which are the exact same thing we do every time we get a permit from the city and do temporary extension out there for the day or afternoon. And as soon as we do that, we're able to go ahead and extend out there. I want to clarify a couple of things. In our stuff, it said multiple tents. The reason for that is I assume everybody's been out there to enjoy Strawberry Plaza at some point, and it's an area that's gorgeous for what it was built for. But when you try to set up a membrane structure, also known as a tent, there's a lot of obstructions in the way. So for us to go out there and just say we're going to throw up a 40 by 60 tent is not something that's really plausible. There's just too much stuff in the way. And so we've asked for multiple smaller structures so that we could get enough dining out there. And then also, I think one of the questions that probably will come up is why we're asking for the entire Strawberry Plaza. The reality for us is that once we put a tent up in the main paved area, there's not going to be a lot of space to move through there. And then also the one thing that we're concerned about, which is always control of alcohol in outdoor space. And Strawberry Plaza is mostly contained by walls on two sides and partial fencing. So if we were able to do the whole area, it would be very easy for us to do that. All my staff are very used to doing that. We do it a lot of times in the summer. Obviously, last year we didn't do it much, but it's something that's normal and usual for us, and it would be a very easy step for us to just do it on a daily basis. Other than that, I'm not really sure if anyone has any questions. I'd love to go and answer them for you guys. But basically what we're looking to do is set up a membrane structure out there according to the rules and start service out there.
Rebecca has a question.
I do. I love the idea, so I'm really supportive of this idea. My question is, I walk by at 4 a.m. most days, and there is usually somebody sleeping there. So what will it be closed overnight when you have assets out there?
Well, that's something that probably technically right now it is closed overnight. There's not supposed to be anybody in the parks after dark. That's the rules. And I will say that when it was first built, we didn't have a lot of issues with people out there, and not necessarily vagrants, just people hanging out and doing things that they're not supposed to. It is almost a daily thing for us now to walk out and remind people that there's no smoking or consumption of open alcohol or open beverages in the park, sometimes multiple times a day. Sometimes we do end up calling the police on those. Most of the time now they just move along, and that's much easier for us. But to address your question, yeah, we would probably put up, so we can't obstruct the exits there. So it'll probably be like a breakaway rope kind of thing with a sign hung on it saying, please enter through the main entrance, something like that. We haven't come up with the wording exactly, but just letting people know that it's temporarily used by a restaurant and not open to the public. Even though the reality is it's still open to the public. I mean, if they want to come in and hang out with us, that's what our place is all about. So.
Okay, any other questions?
I have a question. How much does it actually cost to rent? I'm unaware of this. How much does it cost to rent the park on a daily basis? If this is a question staff could answer for me. Thank you.
Kelly, do you know off the top of your head? We talked about this morning and I don't remember the number now.
It's $75 a day. And then,
The full day.
yeah, for the full day. And then I know that we've broken it in half for people that want to do it for half days. It's $37.50, so half the cost.
And Matt, am I understanding the request is for 180 days?
So it would be for 180 days or less. That way we don't, if I have it for more than 180 days, then we have to go through the standard approval process through OLCC for extension of premises, which can take 6 weeks. I would imagine it would take that long. But my suggestion would be for it to be approved for a specific amount of days with the understanding in the writing that as soon as the COVID restrictions are released, then the permission is gone as well.
So in terms of like COVID restrictions, there's just such a broad swath of COVID restrictions. And when I looked at it, I thought 180 days, it's like a really long time. And I guess for me, that's something I'm not comfortable with. But if we can put maybe some parameters on that, like, you know, when the county moves out of extreme risk, and then I know in that case, then I think that there's allowing for indoor dining. I would be more in favor of something that has a little more time frame on it other than the 180 days, and then a little more definition around what those COVID restrictions look like that we're aiming for to get your business, you know, back in shape.
If I can speak to that real quick, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. The reality is when we come out of extreme, restaurants get 25% occupancy. That's not enough for anyone to really open up, to be honest. If you want to talk about, and I'd love to share those numbers with you in private if you guys like. It's pretty complicated, but the reality is at 25%, you can't even pay staff. And so if we could move that to maybe medium or whatever that one is, I think at that point you get 50% occupancy, and that would be a little more realistic. The other reason I was asking for 180 days with some kind of release is, you know, if we say 90 days, in, you know, 60 days from now, I'll be back here asking for an extension of that. So I guess it just depends on, you know, if you guys, I mean, if that's what you guys want to do, that would be great. I'll be willing to do that and come back every 30 days, 60 days, whatever, and ask for an extension of that. I think the reality is we've all seen, and none of us want to admit to this, but we've seen, you know, how our counties have gone down, and most of those counties this next week will be going back into extreme. So I think that we're probably into midsummer, which would be about 180 days before we have any real release of the stuff. Right?
Can we do something more along the lines of, like, as a council, like I would not want you to have to come back to council, but could we do like 60 days with the staff, like you and the staff reviewing every 30 days hereafter to look at what the county, what the level is, and at the county, what your occupancy level is. Are we getting into a season where people want, at some time the city needs to know, hey, can we rent this park out to somebody else? Somebody wants to have a wedding there, or we're going to have bands there again. So my only concern is that that be reviewed at some point, because you're right. I mean, who knows? Who knew a year ago that we were going to keep prolonging and prolonging and prolonging? So we're all like, hey, look, come summer, we're all going to be free. And just as soon as you really rely on that, we won't be. So I would be comfortable with it as long as it was at some level of periodic staff review.
What was the other permit? Did the other permit that was issued for the rest of this downtown restaurants, did it have a in time or restriction on it?
I believe the other permit, remembering off the top of my head from a couple of weeks ago, was through the extreme risk designation and then a reevaluation upon that time.
Okay.
So I have a few questions and kind of concerns. I think it's important for Matt to work with staff on this, but I don't think putting it back to staff to make 30-day decisions is appropriate, because the whole reason it's here to us at council is because staff did not feel that it was in their wheelhouse to make that decision themselves. So that seems counterintuitive to me. I basically kind of see three issues here. Are we willing to let a private business take over a public space for up to 180 days? Do we even know what the layout's going to be in that space? Because the map that you sent, Matt, no offense, it shows a squiggly line for a fence and then a diagram of the park. So I can't even wrap my head around how this thing would be laid out. Would the public have access to get in there and out? I think we need to do a little more legwork on the planning part of it. And then is the expectation that it's going to be just granted at no cost? That's something we historically have not done for long-term things that take up a city resource for a long time. And let's be real, once you plant a big tent down, you don't want to take that thing down. I get it. Those are a bear. Even multiple small tents are a pain to get down. So, but I have a real ethical issue, to be honest, with virtually blocking out a public place and letting a private business use it exclusively. And so that's where I have a bit of heartburn on this.
Can I address a couple of those real quick?
Please, yeah.
So the rest of the downtown restaurants were granted access. Most of them, the spaces that they're using are right-of-ways, which are still public spaces, if I'm correct. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess in my mind, I understand that there's a lot of concerns because it is a public park, but it is still in the public space aspect, just like everyone else's that's already had permission for almost a month. As far as control is concerned, like I said, you could ask the city staff. I mean, I know that they don't have it set then, but we've literally pulled over 100 permits to use this park before, and it's going to be the same plan use that we always do, and everyone always was okay about that. It was they felt like everything was good. The permission was granted for those one-day uses. I guess I'm
sure that's one day.
Right. Well, I'm missing how that control plan would be any different, though, I guess.
Well, one day is a minor inconvenience to the public. 180 days is half of a year. And I think that's a serious concern. And when you talk about public property funded by public funds, the public has an expectation to have access to, whether they want to go in there in the rain or not, it's a public place. And so they have a right to be there. And in 60 days, 90 days, the weather will be getting better. The public really will want to get in there and use that plaza, and then they can't. And so part of my frustration is that the city came to the Downtown Association and said, we would like to provide you with a congregate dining space, and we will pay for it. We will set it up. We will provide everything for you. And the Downtown Association kind of turned their nose up at that and wasn't into that. And that's your right. And one of the comments at that time last month was, have you reached out to staff at all and talked to them about options? And the answer was no. And so I guess now that we are a month later, have you reached out to staff to discuss options before? Because we got this email 24 hours from the meeting. And it's not very detailed. So have you worked with any staff members over the past month on this?
So we had Kelly Hart and Alicia sitting on a meeting with all of our restaurants to discuss this very subject, and did lay out for each of them to kind of have them understand what this would look like. So yes, so sorry if you've heard kick on of a machine, forgive me if you can't hear me, but yes, so staff I can say was reached out to and spoken to. And I would also like to just kind of address, before I know Matt wants to take this over, that we have reached out to other businesses and other restaurant owners, because in all actuality, we are really looking at the economic decline of a lot of our small business owners who do not have the guarantee of a paycheck month to month or every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So with that said, there's a kind of a critical condition where if we had to review it once it started becoming nicer out, when families, because as a downtown resident who utilizes the park to play, I can say families do utilize that, but it also does create another space for families to, if they are leaving Hazella, who's not having outside dining access, to go walk across the street to utilize another public space for their dining needs. So it is creating some congregate dining in that space. But I do really think if we were to look over that, in essence of having, once it gets nicer out, having that review so it can be used by families. But yeah, I would have to say we did reach out, like I said, to, and having the city, Alicia and Kelly both at a restaurant meeting was really helpful. So thank you to them for that. But yeah, I know Matt wanted to say more.
Just want to clarify something real quick. The Downtown Association was not the one that turned their nose up. That was feedback from the rest of the restaurant owners, feeling that was going to be very beneficial to them. Just don't want to throw.
Well, that's the group. I mean, it's the group of people who LDA is representing here.
Sure.
We're not here talking about the et cetera shop. We're here talking about restaurants. So
yeah. So I mean, we have been. I guess maybe I'm looking like I'm a little ill prepared here, but I didn't realize that there was that much discussion to happen. We just got an email that was really brief that said, we don't feel like we have the authority to grant it to you. Please go before the city council and propose it to them. So that's what we've done.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I would like to hear from staff addressing kind of Jason's concerns, because I agree that those are concerns, but there is also a public good right now. I mean, these are extraordinary times. If this were any other year, I don't think we wouldn't be having this discussion. But another public good is people have no good places to eat out in Lebanon, and this is really an ideal option. I think I would love to see it supported, but I would like to hear from staff to see what kind of obstacles, or if staff is really not wanting this to happen, help me understand why.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, this is Nancy. I don't know if you can see me, but here. I think as Kelly and I talked about it, one of the challenges that we have is that it is not the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, which is what other entities are using. It is a public park, which has a slightly different designation. It's got a different usage by the members of the public. So you walk down a sidewalk, you're going into a restaurant, or you're sitting in front of the restaurant. The park is oftentimes used by people who just go to sit, whether they're eating a brown bag or reading a book or just wandering around looking at art. And using that for exclusive use over a long-term period with ostensibly no payment, no rental, which would be ordinary practice to rent a park every day, is really not the same playing field that we were talking about with the other restaurants. So it's a matter of trying to figure out how to balance that. And we didn't feel like we could, as staff, decide to give exclusive use for one restaurant to a particular park that is a city asset and therefore the community as a whole. So that's, I think that's where we come from and why we've asked for council's input on this. And so ultimately, I think we're looking for whether or not council supports the concept. And then if you support the concept, how do we put sideboards on that? There's been discussion about 180 days, whether that's too long. So what is council comfortable with? I think if we had what council's comfort level is as staff, if there was a reevaluation at 30 days, or there's a reevaluation when the county goes from extreme risk to high risk and high risk to moderate risk, we could look at those issues in terms of fencing off the park, where that fence would go. Those kinds of issues we could work on if we had some direction from council about whether or not they wish to grant exclusive use to a park to Conversion Brewing to use.
So I don't
Mr. Mayor, if I
want
could
to,
add,
I don't want to infringe on a business's ability to do business. And these are extraordinary times. You're absolutely right, Councilor Grizzle. I liked Councilor Steinhabel's idea of, I think it's important to tie this to a metric, not just we're open or we're not, because the state has a unique system that they're using. And right now we know what that system is. My comfort level would be, because there is no indoor dining, let's help them out and allow this for outdoor dining while we're under this extreme setting. When we move to the high level, I think it is next, you now get 25% capacity indoors, which for Matt's probably going to be 20 people or something like that. 25 people. No, it's less than 25. So it's 20 some people. And then, but he also has the sidewalk space in front of his restaurant. And he also has the patio space in Strawberry Plaza as well. And those other restaurants have 25% of their capacity and whatever sidewalk space or parking lot space or whatever they're able to use. I would feel comfortable with that. For that, I would not feel comfortable going to the medium, because honestly, that could be beyond the 180 days, and we may never get there in time. It's kind of the same conversation we had a year ago or a year and a half ago when this all kind of cranked out. How long is this going to last? So ethically, though, I have an issue with giving public property away at no cost. I think if Conversion is going to do this to increase business and make money, there's, even though in a pandemic, there's a cost with doing business, and some sort of payment needs to be made to secure that park in total the way he wants it. Otherwise, it needs to be broken down and put back up so that the public has access to it when he's not using it. That's my feeling.
I tend to agree with that. I don't think that $75 a day is for a long-term rental is a fee that should be charged to Matt, but I also have a problem with just kind of giving it away, as it is a public park. So see where everyone else is on that.
Trey, did you have something to say? I thought I heard you.
yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Nancy said. I mean, ultimately, I would have concerns about this if we weren't still acting under the state of emergency. I mean, we have a lot more flexibility as a city. And ultimately, this decision, I think it was perfectly appropriate for the council to give direction, because ultimately it really is a policy decision. And if the council, can then establish the policy of these specific situations so that the city can then follow through with it, we have that, you have that authority, especially given the state of emergency that's on. So I just wanted to say, I think it's perfectly appropriate. I appreciate that the staff gets their input. I think what I understand and what I hear is that the staff's willing to do whatever the city wants it to do, and the city ultimately is the city council. And on this type of issue, it's more of a policy direction that the city needs before they can move forward. And so I don't have concerns that you either doing it or not doing it is going to raise any legal issues, because we have such flexibility given the state of emergency, and it really truly is a policy decision for this council, and then I think it easily followed through with staff.
Go for it, Karen. Hey, I'd like to chime in here. So I agree with some of the things that are being said. What I don't understand is I am not okay with, it doesn't feel right that the whole entire place be given to Conversion Brewery. I don't know why a smaller section can't be put up for all the things that Nancy said and Michelle said and Jason said. And I also do think that there needs to be 6 months is a very long time. And I understand, Matt, why you're trying to do that, like that you want it up to that point, because then you don't have to deal with the OLCC stuff. But it doesn't mean that you want all of those 180 days. If it has, we go from the extreme to the high and down to the medium or moderate, whatever the heck it's called. So I think there needs to be some parameters in there. And I like the review of, a 30-day or a 60-day review of how are we doing, And if we meet it, if it all of a sudden the designation comes in the mid-month, then I think we need to have that flexibility to be able to change things. I'm just not, I don't understand why we have to have the whole thing. Why can't a section of that be done so that way then the public can still use a piece of that park?
And can I say something on that? And I understand both Councilor Steinhabel's and Boland's concerns with the financial aspect of a business.
Well, wait a minute. I'd like my question answered by now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
before we get to
I
another
recognize. So sorry. Excuse me.
Thanks.
I would be, yeah. I actually have a couple questions I'm gonna answer here, so we'll go to that first. And there is a possibility that we could do a small section of it, if we were to straddle the fence that we currently have. I can't answer any questions right now. Who is it?
I gotta make delivery person back there.
Okay, I can't right now. Sorry. Sorry about that, guys. So if we're to straddle the fence that goes through our current area that we have and go out a little bit, it is a possibility. I have to do some measurements, but we could do that. The reality is, to make that space okay to use for egress and stuff, we probably have to take the fence down temporarily, which is not a problem. I'm a licensed contractor. We could do that and put it back up when we're done. Just as of right now, the easiest way to put a tent up would be right in the middle, and it kind of blocks the path through the park, mostly because the outside is kind of surrounded with a whole bunch of little things that make it impossible to put a tent up over it. As far as the 180 days that keeps coming up, that if that's an issue, that's something we should definitely talk about. That was the number I brought up because that's what OLCC is talking about. That's kind of the max that they want to see. Trust me, they don't want anything else coming on. They've got enough to deal with right now. They've got issues everywhere. So, I mean, if we want to do a lesser time than that, that's fine, both whether it's the whole park or just a smaller area that we could use. A couple of things that Jason Boland brought up, I need to address. I feel like I need to, he made a statement that we would be using public property for making money. At this point, we're not making any money. No restaurant is making money right now. We would be using that to be able to continue to employ our employees. At this point, we're talking about, I'm working on contingency plans on closing down, because hopefully not a permanent solution, but at a certain point, it's more expensive to operate than to shutter the building for a little while. And so this is something that I'm coming before the city council asking. This is an option for us to be able to continue to employ our 12 employees and to stay open for now. If we can't do something, we're going to be looking at other options. And as far as the cost of doing business, I understand what you're saying, Jason, but the reality is every restaurant and bar still has the entire cost of doing business right now. Not even assets that we're paying for, none of them. They're sitting there and we're not able to use them. So if you guys decide that we need to pay something for it, unless it would be, it may be weird to do this, but unless it was attached to gross sales or something, that would be very difficult for me to do, or any restaurant to do, just because we're currently trying to pay for everything that we already have in place and paying for so much per day. I mean, the reality is, Friday and Saturday is the only time we're probably going to have it full out there. The rest of the week is not something we're going to make money on, not ever. And it would be very difficult for anyone to make that pencil out at this point.
Matt, I want to clarify. I didn't mean you were going to get rich, but you're trying to generate revenue so you can keep your employees employed and you can keep the economy rolling. I understand that. And I didn't want my inference to be that I was saying you were going to use the city to get rich. That's not what I mean. What I mean though is that you're going to be using that space. If it's at no cost, it's a benefit that not any other business can really get based on location, right? And you're fortunate to be where you are because you have this option, but every other business down there doesn't have this safety net. And we have to, as a council, they're all taxpayers too. They're all citizens and constituents to. And I swore an oath today to protect them and to stand by the state constitution and to do the right thing for the city of Lebanon. And so I have to think of the bead shop owner. I have to think of the thrift store owners. They are also hurting. They still have to pay rent too. They can maybe get 25% or whatever. Some of these places are just done and they're not going to come back. So I understand your point. I did not mean to put you in that corner or paint you in that light at all. But yes, you have to make money to pay your employees. I get it. I would be comfortable supporting this, like I said, if it was tied to some sort of metric where once you were able to open and you were able to have your people inside and your people, and I mean, we're not going to wait till full 100% here. That's unrealistic. But if you would have your people inside, your people outside, and again, you're fortunate, you've got this dedicated space in the park as it is for your restaurant. So you can have kind of double seating. I think that would probably be a good compromise on the city's part to help you get there. Now, if it can be done with a cordoned off area that keeps some of it available to the public, I think that's cool. I wouldn't feel comfortable buying food somewhere and walking into your dining room and eating it. And that's what I think people would be faced with if they were going to go use that. And I know how welcoming you guys are, but not everyone knows that. And so for someone to buy food at Big Town Hero and then walk down and say, oh, we're going to sit in here and eat and we're not going to buy anything and we're going to leave our mess behind for your staff to clean up or whatever, I don't think people would feel comfortable doing that. And at the same time, if that became a trend, where are your customers going to sit and you're back in a bad situation. So I would like to see it with a metric tied to when it goes away. I would like to see it go away as soon as possible. I do not want to see temporary fencing on Main Street. I don't think that is appropriate. And we have to remember that this, as Nancy spoke to, this park was not designed for gatherings of this type. It's an assembly space, yes, for concerts and performances or just hanging out. That's why it's so hard to put a tent up and put tables up, because there's all these concrete seats and everything and berms and things in there that make it the space that it is. So we're trying to shove a size 12 into a size 9 shoe. And I have concerns, and I wish I didn't, but I do. And I feel like I have to speak up for the people who will question this when it comes out that a business is being given free space and they're going to come and they're going to say why. And believe me, they will.
Okay. One of the things that I did want to address is we do recognize that this is definitely not the use that space was intended for. Also, a couple people have mentioned that that there are events there. I think that if you check with your city staff, you would see that 99% of those events are put on or sponsored by Conversion Brewing. And part of that is because we're next door to it and makes it very easy for us. But part of it is because that's what we do. We build community. And we located ourselves next door to a space that we knew would help with that. And when we do events that we have 300 people come to over the course of the night, we have absolutely no problem paying that rent expense to it. That's part of the built-in. That's how you do business. You build in the expense and say, this event is going to be this popular, and we can pay for it. It's not a big deal. My concern is, at this point, I really don't know how many people are going to come out there, and I have my hopes, but I don't know with when you have a day that it's raining an inch and blowing sideways, even if you have tents and everything in place, it's not real inviting. And that's what we're dealing with for the next 3 months, So I would hope that this would help a lot. This is kind of a last ditch effort for us. And we're kind of thinking, okay, at this point, this is the last thing we've got to try. So.
Do you feel like that some sort of a mixed approach or some sort of a hybrid approach to this is going to be helpful? Or are you like, I gotta do it this way, or it's all or nothing? I mean, do you feel like the hybrid approach could work?
At this point, any space can help. We do currently rent a portion of the park for our patio. We have a little structure up out there that helps, but because of the way the patio is shaped, it makes it really difficult for us to get very many tables in there and have the correct social distancing. If it was a little bit wider, we could double that, but it's just not. And so that has made it nice for the people that are, are just tired of it and they want to just go out and have a beer. And so there's a space for them to do that. The reality is most of them come and have one beer and take off because it's just not very nice to sit out there.
I know you mentioned it, but it just spitballing here, but if you were to remove that fence and bump out to the edge of where the entrance is, I don't know how much space that would be offhand. I can't think, but square that off, or even square it off and run it back as far as you could behind your entry door to where you had your first obstruction. I feel like that would be a pretty big improvement in your space, and you'd be able to cover it strategically with, canopies or what have you.
The edge of the entrance is so it's a triangle right now, and the edge of the entrance is at the corner of the triangle. So it really wouldn't gain much space for us. And I know that some people might think this is premature, but I have already purchased tents that are a specific size to use. The reason why I did that is because if you look online right now, you will not find any tents to buy. There's no place to get them. They are out for about 6 months. If you want to purchase a tent right now, you can't even. 2 weeks ago, you could buy the pieces and put them together, and that's what I did. I bought all the pieces. You can't buy a tent kit, but you can buy all the replacement pieces. So I purchased all the replacement pieces for tents, and now I have tents, but you can't even buy replacement pieces at this point. So I'm kind of stuck with the sizes that I have. So that's why I said I'd have to go out and measure. I believe one of them would go out and leave at least a 6 foot wide path, but it wouldn't be the whole thing.
So
I think, Matt, when you said, keeping 12 people employed, that's a greater good. I think if somebody had a problem with this decision coming to me, I would say we kept 12 people employed. We kept a restaurant through the pandemic. I'm okay with trying to limit, Jason's concern, the 180 days and that this go on in perpetuity. I would tell somebody this is really extreme circumstances, and where you're located, we did the best with what we could. It's winter. There's not a lot of people using the park right now anyway. Let's open it up for restaurant use. So
I have a proposal real quick. First off, in the email that we sent out, there is a signature page that when we started this conversation that all the restaurant owners in downtown that we could get a hold of, because some of them have been closed for a long time, signed, and it's just a statement from all of us saying we understand that some people might get better access than others, and we're all okay with whatever we can get, and that was why I came last month with everyone. We just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. As far as the rest of the retail, we didn't really address them, and the reason is they're not closed right now. I know that retail is struggling, but they are able to have people in their store come and shop. They do have a maximum amount of people that can come in there, but the reality is, you ask any of them, they're not having to regulate that. There's not that many people shopping in retail right now. So really, in all honesty, their effect is they have to wear a mask while they're running their store. So they're not really being affected right now. It's just really the restaurant and bar owners, and the bars, they've just been shut down completely. They're done. They're not even trying. So the proposal would be, it would be very easy for me to take the tents and set them up in the front of the plaza. So it would be, in essence, quarantining off the main street side, in leaving the rear entrance open where the stage is and that other area is. So, kind of be splitting it in half. I know that that's not ideal, but I do know that that would be very, very feasible.
I think that's better than trying to squeeze it against a wall or whatever. Is it an OLCC reason that you have to rope off that front or close that front?
It's Oregon's liquor laws are, ask anybody that's been in any other state, they're very strange. And one of the laws that they like to hyper focus on is you have to have a start and an end to your licensed area. And that has to be expressed in some way, as far as chain link fence, a wall. Some people do as little as, if you've been to very many brewfests, you've probably seen just a ribbon or a rope up, and that does almost no good. And then you also have to prove to the OLCC that whatever barrier you put up is able to be controlled. So if they show up for an inspection and see that people are stepping over your rope or your line that you painted on the ground or whatever you've chosen, you're not controlling your area. You are in violation of an Oregon law and you will get in trouble. So that's why when we first started renting Strawberry Plaza, the inspector came and saw it and he said, man, I don't see any reason we're not ever going to have any trouble here. It's quarantined off so well already that it's obvious where the beginning and end is. You don't even, like, you should hang up signs, but you wouldn't even need to hang up signs. No one would even question it.
So I feel like if you're able to put that, even one sign, 2 feet into the sidewalk off of the entrance that said, all alcohol, whatever the phrasing is, alcohol, no beyond this point, but left it open so that people could still walk in and had a pathway to go in into the back and they don't have to go around or whatever. I would be totally fine with that. And I think that to me, that would meet the intent of the park as a public space while still giving you the flexibility to add extra seating and have an area that you control. But I hate to get hung up on a rope, but like controlling that front, right now you have lines on the pavement for your tables out front. So it'd be the same control measure more or less. And you right now your staff's doing that and they're controlling it. So it would be no different than what they're doing. And it wouldn't be as restrictive to the public. And
right.
That would make me really happy.
The difference as far as OLCC is concerned, I know this is a fine line, but we have windows that we can see that area out the front. That's why they feel comfortable with that, and probably would not as a line, would have to be a rope. Now, here's the thing, it's never our intent to take over the entire plaza. We could definitely have alcohol licensing for the entire plaza, so someone could wander with a beer without having the whole thing covered in tents or tables. So that would make it much easier for us to control the space without, when I say control the space, it's an alcohol term saying once we give you an open container, we have to make sure it stays within our licensed area, right? So that's our.
You don't go to the stage area and have their beer and
right,
wander back to the table if it's not raining or whatever.
And if we only had half the park, that would, our permission, we only had permission for half the park, that would be illegal, and we would have to control them from leaving the whatever area we've decided on. Yeah.
I think we can direct staff to say, look, we'll sign off on the permission for the entire park to use as an alcohol zone, but we will only allow tents to be in the front half and tents and seating to be in the front half. The rest of the seating is kind of as is.
Sure.
The park's intent.
That's right where I was going, Jason. But
it took us an hour to get here.
I think that's a good splitting, coming to a good consensus on that. I like that.
And I have an issue with the fee because we're giving free park space to the public every day in all of our parks. Some of them park in there from daylight till dark or whenever they leave. They're not paying a fee.
Well, I think the fee, Wayne, would be if he were to take the whole park over and basically shut it off to the public, then he would need to pay a fee. But if the public still has access to, let's say, a majority of the park, 51% or whatever, then I don't think there's a need to have a fee like that, other than his insurance that he'd have to provide for, which I'm sure is standard anyway.
Yeah, the city of Lebanon has already have us on file, and they're an additional pay. They have to do that for us to rent the park for even one day. So
if it stays open to the public, I'm okay with not having a fee because I can say, yeah, we're giving them part of the space, but it's an unusual time and we're helping.
Absolutely.
But you still have access to that space. So if you want to be in here, go use that space.
Matt, what was your comment just prior to Jason speaking?
As far as insurance is concerned, for us to be able to rent the park, we have to have the city of Lebanon as an additional payee on the park, on our insurance policy, and they have it on file at the city hall at this point. It's just permanently there.
That's pretty standard.
Yeah, it is, but that's not an issue. We already have that in place.
Okay. Well, I think we're kind of at a point where we can give Matt and staff has some direction now from the council as to where we're at, and we can move forward.
Staff have any questions about what we're talking about?
180 days. Sorry, Councilor. I still have the question of 180 days. What if I feel like we're really close, by the way, and I'm glad because I do support your business both personally and then in this role. I'm glad to see that we're coming to some sort of agreement here. But what if we did like a 60-day review and then staff revisits that with you after 4 weeks? And I say 4 weeks because that gives you 2 cycles, hopefully, to see what it's like in that high category. So once you move to the high, you got, the 2 weeks in high, and then we'll see if they go up or down. And then you can, working with staff, they can really figure out, are we going to stay in high, or are numbers dipping and we're going to open up soon? Or are they going to go back and, 5 weeks and we're going back to extreme and we're in the same spot we were before? So what would that give you enough room to plan, as well as enough room for us to plan on our end, our staff to plan?
I think so. As I just had a concern about having to come before the city council and take up more time from you guys every hour, every 2 months or whatever it was. If the staff is able to meet with me and renew that, then I wouldn't have that concern anymore. And I think that's appropriate, because I think if you guys know my business and my staff, that there really should not be any issues. But if there was a concern that there could be an issue with this change, that would be something that would come up in the review, and we could talk about that and find out, what they were and how they were handled, and so.
I don't see any issues at all with the alcohol or the zone or any of that. The only issue is the kind of the use of the public space, and so I think beyond coming to an agreement on that, we can direct you and we can direct staff to say, work with Matt in collaboration, keep us posted. But if they say we meet every 60 days or whatever, that's between you guys and you can figure it out.
Michelle,
Okay,
would you be okay with 90 days?
Say that again.
I'm with Michelle, actually. I like the 60 days. I mean, so it's a phone call to figure out what's going on. It's not a big deal. If we've already given that direction of, yeah, this is the direction council is saying, what does a phone call mean personally? And then that way there's a little bit more flexibility there, I think.
I would prefer the 60 days. And quite honestly, I'm aiming for that 60 days just in case there are, and I do not expect anything to arise, but if there are issues, that gives everybody a chance to come to our staff and then Matt and his team to come together and say, we need you to address X, Y, and Z, or maybe just, hey, we're good. We're going to keep doing what we're doing until our numbers can trend down or something. It's a check-in. It's not.
I think as long as you guys said that 60 days that was renewable so many times, then you guys don't have to do this again. Yeah, I think that's very appropriate. Yeah.
Okay. At this
very
point,
complicated motion.
It is very, and I think we've all come to a conclusion. I agree with the counselors in all the different ways. I think that we should have a time frame, like Michelle said. A specific time that we can focus and make sure that we know things are working okay, and just kind of a check-in. And then I think also partial of the park, allowing the park to be open still partially. And so I think at this point we'd be ready for a motion if someone has one that kind of follows along with that. Michelle, were you doing one? No, I thought you were writing one down.
I'd almost suggest that we break this into 3, just because it almost seems, all right, maybe not, but.
No, it should be one motion.
Okay.
It's just a long one.
I need a minute.
Okay.
She's so cute.
Okay. I'd like to make the motion that we grant Conversion Brewing partial access to Strawberry Plaza and put that on a 60-day review with our staff, with the understanding that it would be revisited. The status of this use of the park would be revisited after 4 weeks of Lynn County being in the high category.
Very good. And just a point of order. Hold on one second. Just a point of order. Were you also talking about waiving fees?
I did not include that in my motion.
Okay.
And also what did you say? The partial access, we need to specify that he has access to the whole park for alcohol purposes, right? But
Alcohol.
seating for half.
The term is alcohol sales and service. That's what they're going to want to see.
Yeah.
I think we can move and direct staff to tidy up the loose ends with Matt. I don't think we need to spell everything out because there's going to be things that come up. So I don't even know. Trey, wake up. Do we even need a motion on this, or can this just be a staff direct or a consensus to advance Matt to staff and work through it with staff?
I think Nancy probably has thoughts on this too, but I had actually leaned over and asked Nancy if she wanted, if she thought we needed a motion on this for direction. And her response was, you know, that the discussion itself is now giving us policy direction. And I think staff is fully capable of implementing that policy at the more micro level. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Certainly there's nothing wrong with it either.
So you can
Mr.
rescind
Mayor,
it.
I would like to withdraw my motion.
But it was so nice. You did such a good job.
I don't
Okay,
need that
so
in my life.
the motion has been withdrawn.
Michelle didn't make the motion, but I would make a motion that we waive the fees during this emergency period we're in here with COVID, so that Matt has a better chance of keeping staff and keeping the restaurant open.
Okay, motion on the floor. Is there
So
a second?
I don't have a, oh, okay, it's not a discussion. Yeah, I'm good with that. I'll give you a second. Because it's just a small section of that he's using. It's not like he's using, he's not taking over the entire park.
Right.
Yep, so I'll second that.
Are we, because we just decided we didn't need to discuss, is that part of the details that we just decided we didn't need to vote on, right? This is just
If
entirely.
that's part of the details, then we don't.
Right.
I think we can take, I think we can take that as council has given us good feedback about the policy direction with some details, and I can tell you that as we get into it and start putting up tents, there will be details that haven't been discussed yet, but we'll work through them. What we really needed was that policy discussion you guys have just had and given us some really good information about how to structure this agreement and get it put into place. So thank you.
You're so nice to us, Nancy.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Shall we vote?
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
There you go.
The
Withdraw
motion has
your
been
second.
withdrawn.
I
And
was on the
staff,
second.
and staff has been well directed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Cassie.
Thank you, guys.
All right, moving on, expansion of alcohol impact and enhanced enforcement areas. Trey Kennedy and Jeff Clayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna pretty much turn this mostly over to Mr. Clayson, and I think the chief had some comments on it as well. You know, Mr. Clayson used earlier in his career was a stand-up comic, so I guess I'm considered the warm-up act. So, so without further ado, Jeff Clayson.
I don't have any jokes for this.
Well, that's why you became a lawyer, I think.
There you go.
Funny anyway.
So we do have a memo. We did kind of address a memo to council regarding the expansion of the alcohol impact and enhanced enforcement area. We actually reviewed the entire ordinance. The last time it was reviewed was back in 2012. So there's been some changes in the law, references to state ordinances that no longer exist, as well as cleaning up some grammar and spelling errors. The biggest change that we have that I wanted to point out was we were wanting to expand the downtown area. And right now, I believe the boundaries are Vine Street on the north, Maple Street on the south, Park Street on the east, and then 2nd Street on the west. And we wanted to expand that to include Oak Street on the south, as well as Grove Street on the east, with the other areas remaining the same. In discussing the situation with Chief Stevenson, he's noted that over the years, there's been an increase in calls from local businesses as well as local residents complaining about some of the behavior here. And the AIEEA, essentially, it just gives the officers kind of better ability to enforce the rules and laws, and has added restrictions that can apply to these, like the downtown area as well as the Lebanon Plaza area. I've also noticed, just as my time doing the city prosecution, that there has been quite a few citations coming across pretty consistently for the public and public use. So yeah, predominantly it's just grammar changes, but that is the biggest change is the expansion of the area. And I don't know if Chief Stevenson wants to add anything, or Trey.
Chief,
Trey,
did you
I told
have
you there was no
anything to
jokes.
I think I jumped in there. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Can little mic a little closer?
Try. You guys, can you hear me okay?
That's a little better.
All right. So I think Jeff did a good job summing it up. Basically, in a nutshell, what's happening is, especially in the Ralston Park area in that zone right there, we're able to exclude individuals from that park for their behavior. And what they're doing is just going out over to Oak Street or even going on to Grove Street and hanging out in these areas where they know they can, but yet still be close proximity to other individuals within that park. So what this will enable us to do is not only exclude them from the park, but generally from that area. Like Jeff had pointed out, we got a lot of complaints from individuals that their behaviors from the park are just carried on over to Grove Street or even over to the Oak Street side. So, you know, what this will do is allow us to help clean that area up just a little bit more and remove some of the behavioral issues that are going on within that area.
Yeah, I know, Chief, we've talked about it. I get a lot of complaints in that area, and it's just continuous and the same people, and it's over and over again. So I agree. This is a bad area that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's very frustrating we're taking care of getting them out of the park, but they're just going right across the street onto the sidewalk. And this also includes the sidewalk surrounding the park, which will also help because we have those issues as well, where, you know, we'll get them out of the park, but then they'll just go right onto the sidewalk and then just, you know, carry on their behavior. So after listening to a lot of neighbors and some business owners around that surrounding area, I'm hoping that this will make a positive impact in removing some of that behavioral attitudes that we're getting currently.
Good.
So with this ordinance then, so like for the park, for example, I know in my previous life, we didn't just have Central Park as part of the exclusion. It went clear to the sidewalks as exactly what would happen when they would go sit on the sidewalk and they thought they had us beat. And we would say, oh, no, sorry,
Right.
You're incorrect. So it went to the curb, from curb to curb. So is that going to fix this then?
So I was trying to see if, I know we did a change to the camping area. I don't know if I had the definition in here, but yeah, we would want to extend it. I'm just trying to make sure if I had it in this one or the definition section, but it would include the vanity area, the sidewalk, basically all the way to the street. So it would cover that sidewalk.
Even like the in between the sidewalk and the curb? All
Correct.
Like, okay.
Yeah. So it's not like.
Because otherwise they'll figure that out.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's been kind of one of the problems.
And the map that was attached to it does show it going to the opposite, the opposite curve.
Perfect. Okay.
Correct. And I think I was talking with some people, so we could probably get a better map that doesn't highlight all the gas station and banks in the area. This is just the one I had available, but that does show the exact zone. And there should be a red line draft of the ordinance in there that shows all the changes that we're asking to be made. So hopefully it would, cover that area.
It's blue line, but we'll accept it.
Exactly. A little combination of blue and red.
Any other questions? Have the city attorney read the title of the ordinance, please.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Have the title. Let's see.
Trial by fire. I remember I'm trying to get Jeff and some others maybe into council meetings a little bit more, because I remember when I first started, My first council meeting, I had only been invited by Judge McHill to one other council meeting, so we get people a little bit prepared for these, so go ahead. I was giving you time to find it.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. So this is a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 9.18 of the Lebanon Municipal Code, Alcohol Impact and Enhanced Enforcement Areas. Ordinance bill number 2021-03, or ordinance 2959.
To approve. Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance bill 2021-03. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The ordinance passes. How's everybody doing? Are we looking at a 5-minute break, or are you guys okay?
Push
Power
through it. Power through.
Let's power through.
Okay. All righty, moving through. Update on illegal camping laws, current Ninth Circuit. Oh, I got your name all messed up. Trey Kennedy and Jeff Clayson and Chief Stevenson.
All right, so I believe I'm going to be covering this one as well. And for those of you that don't know, I am an associate attorney out of Trey's office, which means Trey is my boss. Don't feel bad for me though. My last boss was my ex-mother-in-law, so things can definitely be a lot worse. I was trying to get some of the jokes in. Now, Trey wanted me to take a look at some of the anti-camping laws, cases that have come out recently from the Ninth Circuit, as well as kind of assess what impact that they would have on Lebanon's current camping ordinance, and also kind of give some direction to the council as far as the best way to proceed forward. And not to really spoil things for you, but it looks likely that the Lebanon ordinance is probably unconstitutional, and we're going to be asking the committee to, or the council to establish a committee to decide how to best move forward, because right now this area of the law is definitely evolving and changing. It's likely that there's going to be more case law coming out about it in the future, and it also looks like there's going to be some legislation from state government as well coming through. So all of this could impact how the city wants to address the issue. So just to give you kind of a simple idea of what I'm talking about when I mention camping laws, these are the laws that prevent a person from just taking a tent and putting on public property and saying that they live there now. Of course, the law is a lot more nuanced than that. So as we discuss the case, hopefully you'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. But of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at the end of this.
Are we sharing the screen?
Yeah, so I'm going to have a PowerPoint set up. Hold on one second.
4 tents on public property? What's going on here?
Here. We just want to start the slideshow now. We've got a lot of.
Don't show the silly notes.
You got it?
Yeah, down at the bottom.
Down there. Perfect. Okay. Good.
All right, perfect. So the first case I want to talk about is Martin versus the city of Boise. This case started around 2009. It involved basically several of the homeless people in Boise suing the city, saying that the current camping ordinances were violating the 8th Amendment clause against cruel and unusual punishment. Now in Boise, the law was extremely broad. It basically banned any sort of camping at any time on any public property. And camping was defined very broadly, so it could even include something as simple as sleeping. So if you fall asleep at the DMV, that could be camping in Boise. Right? And this court came out saying that these laws were way too broad, that sleeping is a natural function of being a human. Everybody needs to be able to sleep. And in the off chance that a person has nowhere else to sleep, they're going to need to sleep outside. So the city can't essentially make that a criminal act. And in Boise, basically, this could, if you were caught sleeping outside, this could be a criminal citation, so you could face up to 30 days in jail or several $1,000s worth of fines. Now, in ruling, in making the ruling, the court basically said that this was supposed to be narrowly interpreted. So the problem wasn't necessarily the laws themselves, it was just how that they were being applied to the city. That the city can't ban sleeping everywhere in case a person has nowhere to sleep, but they are able to impose time and place restrictions on where people can sleep, right? So they're not required, the city is not required to establish any sort of shelter to people, anything like that. They just can't criminalize basically a status of being homeless. So if a person has nowhere else to sleep, they don't really have a choice in the matter. They're going to have to sleep outside. Oops, I went too far. So the ruling doesn't establish a right to camp. So it doesn't allow a person to sleep wherever they want, whenever they want. The city is still allowed to kind of impose those restrictions. Even in those areas, it's not like it's a Thunderdome situation where there are no rules. The city can still impose disorderly conduct laws, littering laws, anything like that. It's just that they can't ban actual sleeping all the time. Following up with that was the city coming out, or a case coming out of Grants Pass recently. And I'm sorry, the city of Boise actually appealed this all the way up to the Supreme Court. But in December 2019, the Supreme Court refused to hear it, which essentially means that this is law for the Ninth Circuit, which includes Oregon. So this is considered law. It was followed up with the Blake versus Grants Pass, which was very similar to the Boise case, but instead of making it a criminal act, they just made it a violation. So a person wouldn't face any jail time, but they could, again, be subject to several $1,000s worth of fines. There was, in Grants Pass, it didn't even require any sort of camping or tent. It could be enough that if a person just had like a rolled up sweater placed underneath their head for a pillow, they could be subject to citation for the camping law in that case. And in the case of Blake herself, she was actually a Grants Pass resident, so she had grown up there before coming across some problems and eventually becoming homeless. In her case, she was actually cited for walking in the park. She had a blanket wrapped around her waist, and she was cited for camping, as well as later cited for trespass. And I think those two citations together, she received over a $700 fine. And in total, she had over $5,000 worth of fines with the city, which if she can't pay rent, like she's not going to be able to ever pay those fines. It's just beating a dead horse, essentially. So of course, so the court again came out saying that, this is going too far. You can't ban sleeping everywhere in the city at all times, right? And it also kind of further extended it, saying that a person has the right to take the minimal steps necessary to try to protect themselves from the cold while they are sleeping outside or while they're trying to survive the elements. So again, the court said that this was a narrow ruling, that it doesn't, the city can still kind of impose time and place restrictions. It doesn't have to allow a person to sleep wherever they want, whenever they want. The city is not required to provide any sort of shelter to a person or anything like that. They just can't punish a person for sleeping outside if they have nowhere else to go. And if they do have somewhere else to go, then of course, those laws are still enforced, but it just kind of broadened that original law and also covered violations. So the city can't impose any sort of like actual penalty unless there was a reasonable alternative. Let's see. And again, other laws would still apply. So the disorderly conduct, harassment, anything like that, those would still apply. The city of Grants Pass has has put this on appeal, hasn't reached the court yet, and there's no idea of whether or not the court will actually pick it up, but it's still under appeal. So like I said, there could still be some changes depending on what happens in the future. These cases, they also kind of talked about, but didn't specifically address sleeping in cars. With this also they've hinted about it a little bit, but they didn't directly address it. So if somebody was sleeping in either like a car or a camper or anything like that, some cities have basically ruled out any sort of sleeping in public like parking spots. So this is kind of open to being challenged in the future. It just depends on how the law turns out, what basically the courts do, as well as possibly with the legislature. And as I mentioned, the legislature, it is possible that they're coming out with some changes as well. And I actually went a little bit off or out of order with the PowerPoint slides here. So this is actually slide 11 in the book, but I have it as slide 5, or 7, sorry. So the proposed legislation is Tina Kotek out of the State House proposed House Bill 4001, which would declare homeless a state of emergency. I don't know if you guys have been up to Salem or Portland or anything like that in the future, but it is, I mean, there is definitely getting out of control. And with this, it did actually receive unanimous support from the House Rules Committee, but they never actually received a vote just because of the Republican walkout last year. And then, of course, the COVID situation kind of put a damper on everything else. But there is an indication that she is looking to reintroduce this bill, and it would provide anywhere from $40 to $60 million in state funds to help create new shelters as well as public hygiene centers. So this is a possibility that there could be grant money to the city depending on what is eventually proposed and if the law is actually accepted. Now, I know that Lebanon itself doesn't have any form of shelter here. I believe the closest shelter would be in Albany. I haven't had a chance to see the Albany shelter, but from what I've heard, it's not the best example of what a shelter could be. I did get a chance recently to go down to Medford with Chief Stevenson as well as Captain Hyde, and we were able to look, is actually last Friday, at some of the sites that they have down in Medford that's actually being run by a group called Rogue Retreat. And this is Lebanon's current ordinance right here. It's very broad, a lot of stuff to read here, so I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version of the fact that it encompasses basically a lot of what Boise and Grants Pass does. It's very likely it's unconstitutional. We haven't been enforcing it for quite a while now, and so that's why we're coming to council to try to get a better understanding of the direction council wants to take to make sure that we can enforce these laws, but that we're also enforcing them and they're constitutional.
I have a question. So in this Lebanon ordinance, do they not have a system where you are giving a 48-hour notice, where you post it on the tent to give them an opportunity to comply and get out?
So this, yeah, so in Grants Pass as well as Boise, they didn't even require it. So it didn't matter whether it was temporary or permanent, anything like that. If the person so much as just was sleeping on the ground, they could be cited under it. Right. So they didn't even require any sort of notice.
Yeah, I'm not really caring about them, other than that's extreme. But like for Lebanon, I mean, I will tell you, Corvallis has a very good system with regards to this, that it gives you at least this 48-hour notice. So could a Lebanon officer just walk up to someone and cite them for illegal camping just right there without even giving them the proper notice and such?
Yes, is the answer,
Okay.
which is not unusual. I mean, maybe unusual for what you were used to. The 48-hour, I believe, comes in on the ability to move their stuff, right? Their tents and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But the citation, there's guilty when, or not guilty, but cited when observed, right? Camping and reasonable beliefs and all that kind of stuff.
Right, but then you're just kind of putting something ahead of, you know.
I know, but what you're talking about is the same thing that they do with the RVs and that kind of stuff. They park and they go for 48 hours, and then right before the deadline, they move somewhere else.
Yep.
I mean, and it is what it is, but, and that's, that's kind of why, we know that we've got to change a lot of this stuff. So that's where we're headed kind of towards the end of this, is we need direction on where the council wants to go on this.
I mean, because I agree. I mean, we used to get complaints of saying, well, there's a homeless person sleeping in the park and I want you to get rid of them. Well, what if, Wayne wanted to go and take a nap in a park? That's no different, and we would try to explain that. You can't say you can't sleep in a park.
Well, we never have.
No, I understand that. I'm not saying the opposite, but in general, you can get a complaint like that, right? And you would have to explain that away, that just sleeping somewhere isn't going to be camping.
you know, in the daytime. They're taking a nap in the park, you know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what camping means is a problem. Are they camping when they have their stuff there for a certain amount of time? Or they're camping when they have a blanket? You know, and all that kind of stuff was different among different cities and different areas. And that's where the cases kind of come out and said, no, they have a right to sleep and they have a right to stay warm and that kind of stuff. So.
Right.
So,
Sorry, Wayne. What?
Based on Grants Pass and Boise, will you be bringing maybe it's not a better non-constitutional ordinance to us?
Well,
loosen it up some, or?
Well, eventually. I mean, I'm maybe usurping Jeff's his grand conclusion here, but you know, to enforce almost anything as it relates to camping or sleeping or where they can do it and all that is going to be dependent on whether there's an alternative, right? If they have nowhere else to go, if there's no options, our ability to enforce any of this is almost nothing.
Yeah.
And you know, so you know, the questions of providing that option is the policy decision that this council has to not decide tonight, of course, but take a hard look at. You know, and if we do want to provide an option, and again, that's a policy decision for this council. What does that look like? And I think ultimately, and you know, Chief Stevenson has done a lot of work on this too. And you know, like I said, they went down and looked at some options down in Medford, I believe, about how to deal with this issue, and especially with these opinions and different state law that's happening. So it's evolving and trying to figure out a way to deal with it. But the bottom line is we can't do much of anything until we provide some type of an alternative. And if we don't provide an alternative, then we're saying we're not, you know, we can't do anything.
But we could do time and a place. I'm sorry, Wayne. Go ahead.
Yeah. But that at those places, right?
Right.
That's what Albany City Council was up against, and they did fund some homeless shelter to basically get around some of the things that they didn't have in place, which we don't have in place. We don't have a place for them to go.
Correct.
You know, and we need to be giving our officers some kind of, I guess, guidelines as to how they enforce any kind of an ordinance.
Yeah. So, and then essentially that's what we're asking, is just kind of a little bit more direction. Again, we can impose the time and place restrictions on these. In doing my research, what I've heard a lot is they definitely prefer when a city is saying or providing areas where they can sleep. So it's fine to say, yeah, you can't sleep in parks, but the ordinance is less likely to be challenged if it's saying, okay, you can sleep in these areas during these times. The other side basically is more appreciative of that. So rather than, you know, everyone can kind of appreciate being told what you can do as opposed to what you can't do. And I think that's kind of what they're looking at here. So we just need to be able to establish an area that if a person is found in the park sleeping, they're not supposed to be there. Officers can be like, you can't sleep here, but you can go over to this area, and you won't have to worry about being either arrested or cited for sleeping. And again, like I said, other laws apply, and there can be time and place restrictions as well that are imposed. And so, like, oh, go ahead.
I would like to hear from Chief Stevenson. Chief, just some of your opinions on the different things that you saw, maybe what you liked, what might work in Lebanon, or just some of those things, since sounds like you did a little tour of some of the facilities.
Yeah, yeah, I did do a tour back there. I'm just going to back up and answer. I think Karen asked a question in regards to, do we post 48 hours to a victim from locations and things of that nature. I think that's what you're asking, Karen. Okay.
Yeah.
So in general, that's
Frank,
exactly.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Maybe it's on my end. I just cannot hear you.
No, it's hard.
No, he's very low.
I don't
I'm
know
having
what the
difficulty
microphone
also.
is on this thing. Maybe if I lean forward or something. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Mm,
better.
Not really.
All right, I'll try to talk loud. But to answer Karen's question, yes, we do in fact give people the majority of the time 48 hours to vacate their property, to vacate the location that they're currently at. The problem is we have no place for them to go. And that's what I'm very fearful of, is that we're going to run into a situation where individuals, and it's not just sleeping in the park, I'm talking camping, I'm talking about individuals who are going to be setting up camps in Ralston Park, River Park, all of our beautiful parks that we've worked so hard to clean up are now in jeopardy of being overtaken by individuals who have no other place to go. And as a city, that's something that we have to start looking at as far as what the police are going to be able to do. As if it stands right now and we don't have a location for them to be at, then these individuals that are going to be setting up camp, there's going to be a whole lot of nothing that the police officers are going to be able to do to move them or to guide them in different directions. I would even go so far as to saying the exclusionary zone will become all and void if we don't take some kind of approach to find, or at least come up with some kind of solution to finding a location for them to go. And that is where it's scary to think about that. To think about the fact that someone could go up and set up a camp within Ralston Park or any of the parks for that matter, and that's now their residency, and we can go all day long and give them citations for disorderly conduct and drug use and smoking and drinking, but to remove them, to really truly address their problems, we're going to have to find something else for them to do. So what we did, we learned of I think Jeff mentioned going down to Medford, we did. And what we saw there was like a three-tier approach to homelessness. And what that was, you had kind of a tent city set up that was funded, I think, by COVID money. Then you had their shelter that was in place. And I have to tell you folks that when I went to go to this place, I didn't even know it was a shelter. It was very well ran, organized, clean. It didn't smell. There was what made the difference is the fact that it had full-time staff available there 24/7. It wasn't ran by a volunteer, and it wasn't ran by anybody that's just, it was ran very, very organized. There was also some tiny houses that was kind of the third and final step for individuals is they would go into these tiny houses and kind of learn how to live on their own. And that's kind of what the whole concept or framework, if you will, behind this program was, that they're giving individuals a little bit of, I guess, some ownership of their own well-being and livability issues. So, the biggest thing, what I would love to see happen is for as many people as we could get from the council, mayor, is to go down and just kind of do a tour of this place, because I think we can glean some ideas on what we want as a city and how we want to approach that. I think we had something in place there for a while with Dave Albanese, and when Marbit, I think his name was Marbit, came down, and we formed a coalition, and it just didn't get any traction. I'm not exactly sure why. My main thing would probably be that it's kind of the police department were at the spearhead of that. And in order for us to really make a positive impact and to get ahead of what is coming our direction, is we need to come together, council members and members from the public and staff, and maybe even have an ad hoc committee or something that we can all kind of sit down and start brainstorming what we want as a city goes, and how we want that to look. Do we want a shelter? Do we want to have a place designated for tents and RVs that's ran by like a full-time staff? And I'm not saying that it's ran by the city staff. I'm saying that it's ran by 801c3 or something of that nature. So these are just some ideas, and I'm just kind of rambling and talking out loud. But the biggest thing to remember, and the biggest thing for the police and the city goes, is if we don't take any action, or we don't start coming up with some kind of solution to this very complex problem, we're going to end up with an ordinance that basically won't allow us to do what is needed to be done to remove and find a better place for individuals to go that and maybe possibly even help some individuals along the way. So one of the big things about the program in Medford that I liked was it was a 60% success rate, meaning 60% of the people that came through there are finding places to live and to be successful. Talking with a little bit of police side of things up in Medford, it's reduced the amount of calls for people who are being vagrant. So I think there's some positive things that I know I took away from it. I know that Captain Hyde also took away from it, and I know Jeff did too. But I don't think it's. I think it's something that we as a city need to kind of look at and kind of steal from that framework and come up with what we want to do as a city. Hopefully, am I rambling? Can you guys hear me still?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Okay. So my biggest suggestion would be that we do form or leave it up to the council's decision, but to form some kind of a committee that will start looking into this, diving into it, and figure out what's going to work best for the city of Lebanon, and what do we want to do in regards to finding a place for people to go, so we don't have an issue where, again, where we're setting up, where individuals are setting up shop and living within our public parks, and that is what scares me a lot, is just knowing that this is going to come down the line. If we have no place for them to go, then there's not going to be anything that the police officers are going to be able to do. And that is, it's scary to kind of think of that world that could come down. You not only have the drug and alcohol issues, but we have now drugs where they were felonies are now going to become violations. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that activity. And if we can't get these people to move on and find a place for them to go, then they're going to be doing it right there in the parks. And so a lot of things to think about, and a lot of things that are going to be coming our direction. And the biggest thing that I want to say is, I would love to be able to get in front of this as much as we can and find some kind of solution to a livability issue, that find something that the city can do. And what that is, again, I highly encourage anyone that wants to go on that tour. It's very informative. A lot of good ideas that are out there that I think we can actually take from. And I know the individual up there running it and people that were running that program up there are more than willing to help the city of Lebanon out as much as they can by giving us some framework, giving us some ideas on how to fund it. When I asked that question in Medford, I asked how much the city was out on this, and he said not very much, and very little. It's minimal. It's land. It's things of that nature. So the city doesn't pay for the staff. The actual nonprofit organization is the one that's paying for staff. But and I think in order for us to do something, I really want to make sure that we're doing it right, and not just something. And no offense to Albany, but Albany does have a homeless shelter. However, that shelter is ran by mostly volunteers, and I don't believe they can just, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I think we could look at and from the Medford framework and kind of go from there.
Hey, Chief.
Yeah.
Another question for you. I know we discussed these kinds of issues earlier in the COVID pandemic with the Lynn County and some of the other issues. How is enforcement for you folks on the private property issue? How does that work out? Or I guess it'd be public property if the city put the property up, but how's the enforceability and the issue of you guys dealing with problems if something becomes a problem?
Are you talking about having a place for people to go, or?
No, either one, like whether it's the small homes or whether it's the camping with tents and there's an area for people to do that with. We had discussed that at a church that it might be an issue because it's private property. We wouldn't really be able to enforce everything. They would have to do that. That's my concern.
So yeah, and that's a valid concern, but what would be different about having a place, the city needs to have some kind of control, if you will. So if it's the land, then it's city-owned land, but it's operated by full-time staff that work well with the police department. So we can still go in and enforce what's needed to be enforced rather than like a private property type situation, like as in a church or something of that nature. Is something that's dedicated by the city to be this location, will still give us the opportunities and the option to go in and enforce what needs to be enforced. I don't think that we would want to give all control over to just, a place, but to have some kind of involvement to the point where they have to abide by ordinances and they have to, much like, if this is kind of much like a place where you have the food carts at or something of that nature, where they have to have and abide by a certain amount of ordinances and rules and regulations. So as it would stand in a private entity, then again, it would change a little bit on what we could and could not enforce other than what's in the ordinances.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say one other thing, and I mean, this is only one step in a bigger problem, an overall problem as well. And I think there's going to be, we need to address the issues of some of the moving homes, right? The campers and the RVs moving around town, and ultimately there's going to be able to enforce some of that stuff realistically. We're probably going to have eventually, and again, we haven't had a lot of case law on it yet, but a place even for those to maybe park. But that's something that I think just needs to be looked at as far as getting ahead of this. And one of the unique things that we have in Lebanon, and not unique in a good way, is the county pockets that we have in so many areas. For example, around Porter Park, and there's such a limit of what the city can do because there's people that know exactly where those county lines are too. But we have been, and Chief Stevens could talk to this as well. We've been working very well with the county on addressing some of the issues in those county areas that are basically City of Lebanon but county property. And there's been a much higher attention to those by the county that was definitely interrupted by the COVID, but there was some real progress being made, and we hope that that will continue to be made with respect to some of those properties and some of the encampments and that kind of stuff that are essentially in the City of Lebanon, but not under our jurisdiction.
One of the things that I was concerned about during the COVID was erecting a homeless camp or tent camp, and then we could do nothing about it because it was on private property. So that was one of the things we went through. I think it's time that Lebanon has something for people who are homeless, an alternative. And I think that putting together an ad hoc committee, a couple counselors, staff, chief, whoever else we want to get on there, and go through this process of, one, looking at the code, and then two, also looking at what we can do to make this a better place. And part of that might be, the small tents, whatever it is. But I think that would be something for a committee to work on and get feedback from the community and those kinds of things. And of course, working with community partners like Community Services Consortium and those places.
Mayor, if I could say something.
Sure.
So one of the things that I liked that they did is that they helped the local people first, because one of the questions is, if we build this, are a bunch of other people going to come from other communities? And how they dealt with it is they used the local people first, and made sure that they were taken care of. And then there was also a vetting process. And most of the people that they would come into contact, the homeless people, they were referred by the police department themselves. So they kind of knew who the people were and what kind of services they needed. So I thought that was a really interesting way for them to go about. So you don't have all the other people coming from the other cities, because that was one of the questions I had. And they said that they're not seeing them coming from the other cities.
I'm so glad you said that, Kim, because that has forever been my concern.
Right, that was mine too.
Yeah, I listened to a radio program where there was a program talking about how proud they were that people came from across the nation to their city to partake in that program, and I'm interested in helping people, and I'm compassionate, but I would really like to see that it's Lebanon people that we're helping, and that we're not attracting somebody from who's homeless in Indianapolis because they hear that Lebanon's a comfortable place to hang. Go there, Lebanon will take care of you. And so as long as we have some sort of a balance where there's accountability and there is, I'm really glad you said that. That I would be interested in learning more about.
Yeah,
that.
and I think
not
going down there
on a committee.
Right. I think going down there and seeing the tour, it really truly is going to be completely eye-opening for you guys. It completely transformed my thoughts of what I was even thinking about homeless shelters.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing also to kind of add on to that is they're a huge proponent of a hand up, not a handout. So they don't give out free coffee. They don't, unless you're involved or in these in the shelters or in the tent camp, and they monitor who comes and goes. Not just anyone can walk in, and so it's like I said, was very well organized, and I was very pleased to hear the fact that it's a hand up, not a handout, because I think that's one of the bigger issues that we have is the handouts, and and the fact that they take care of what he called their homegrown first. And I think, again, that struck very close to me too, because you want to help out and address what you can with individuals who are from within the city, not just coming and visiting looking for a free service. And he's basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but they don't get a whole lot of out-of-towners because it's just they understand that they don't give out free handouts.
Right.
Very good. So, council, are we okay with a committee to go forward and looking at this, or any other ideas or opinions?
I'm going to take off the shared screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like,
Thank you.
we're still in the middle of a presentation, right? I think I did that.
They've covered most of it. I would agree with the chief and Captain Hyde as well. As I think going down there really makes a big difference. They did talk about the staff. The staff is there, and they help people. So they meet with the people on a weekly basis, making sure that they are making progress to get back into more stable housing. So if they need documents such as driver's license or social security card, they're there to help kind of make sure that they are progressing, to show them the ways that they can get this and kind of get back to something more stable. As Chief said, that they're not offering any sort of handouts. So you can't go to this area and ask for a blanket or even get a cup of coffee. If you're not associated with the area, you can't just hang out. So you don't have a bunch of people hanging out there. And if the people staying in the facility don't have anywhere to go, they can just stay where they're at. They're not required to leave during the day or anything like that. So again, you don't have people just hanging out outside causing any sort of problems, anything like that. The people are required to do daily chores. They're required to make sure that, their area is cleaned. And like Chief had said, that, they have about a 60% success rate. So a lot of these people are just trying to figure out, how can they don't want to be homeless. They don't quite know how to not be homeless. So this kind of helps retrain them and make sure that they're on more of a path towards success.
Yeah, I would recommend a tour down there instead of a tour up to Portland. That's just my opinion.
Exactly. And even there, like in Portland, they have like a self-governed tent city, and this wouldn't be self-governed. These people, again, or a lot of these people, are needing help, so they're not necessarily making the best decision. So it is made kind of laid out. This is the way to progress. These are the requirements. While you can still have addictions and still be kind of going through some of that problem. You can't have alcohol or drugs on the site, so you wouldn't be allowed to do stuff on site. But they're not necessarily going to turn somebody out just because they are still struggling with whatever addiction they're dealing with. But the goal is to get them, to address those issues and hopefully overcome. Part of the progress would be 90 days clean and sober towards trying to get more successful housing. And he had talked about like the small houses. They had tiny houses, which are kind of like I guess like a shed that's kind of divided in two. And even in the tiny houses, like people don't live there for free. There's actually a rent, like a $75 at first. And then I think after like the first 60 or 90 days, that actually goes up and like by $100. And, half of that increase is put into kind of a fund for them to kind of later on be able to use towards maybe a deposit towards a rental or something like that. But it is designed, this is not designed to do long-term housing. This is not your long-term solution. It is designed to kind of help progress them and get them into something more stable. So
how's their nourishment needs met?
They provide their own food. So I know they get a lot from the community. They said something like Little Caesars is constantly donating pizzas. So they are able to, eat like that.
So they served a meal in this homeless shelter.
Mm-hmm. They have cooking areas. So again, they're not provided food. The staff isn't necessarily providing them food. I don't know if they're collecting cans or how necessarily what they're required to do in order to eat. But they do have community gardens, which they will have group meals where they try to treat it like it's a community. And so of course there's no stealing, anything like that as well. So laws are still enforced there, but they're just kind of trying to help these people back on their feet and show them how to move forward. The only other thing I would mention was I did review one recent case law or the ordinance out of Pendleton. Pendleton, they had an article talking about how they believe that they've drafted an ordinance that would comply with the recent case laws, coming out of Boise as well as Grants Pass. They have kind of time and place restrictions, and it should be kind of the last slide in the presentation. But I do question whether or not their ordinance is constitutional. I think it is open to being challenged, especially as Trey was talking about. There's going to be probably further development in regards to RVs as well as sleeping in cars. So I think again Pendleton might kind of show a framework for it, but I would definitely not recommend adopting Pendleton's as is. I think it's probably likely to be challenged sometime in the future.
But at least they have a start.
It's a start. So yeah, it is something to look at. And so like I said, a committee or something like that to kind of look at the city's options in the future, make sure that we're staying ahead of this would definitely be the right way to go.
And like I've always said in the past, we want to do what's right, but we don't want to be in somebody else's PowerPoint. The X versus the city of Lebanon up at the Ninth Circuit.
Absolutely.
As fun as that would be for me, I still don't want to see it.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Well, I've thrown out about a committee. What would you like to do?
Well, I think as many counselors should go that can.
So like I said, I think there's kind of two things. One, the committee, and then two, would the whole council want to go, or just the committee go down to Medford, and kind of what, that certainly can be scheduled separately, and the other issue is the committee.
I would be interested in going, but not being on the, as far as the committee, I got dibs on not it. But I would be interested in going to see, because I am concerned about this as a project. I have concerns. I'd like to get to where Kim is. I want to be there. I really do. And so, and Chief Stevenson. So
I think you cite the perfect person to be on the committee, to be honest.
I'm not. I'll quit. I'm done.
Oh, I make a motion. We assign her to the committee.
Great.
No, I think definitely. I mean, I wish if I were staying, I would be a part of this committee. I think we definitely need to be ahead of this, because the lawsuits will start coming as the Ninth Circuit continues with the progression that they're already going. And I'm a proponent for the committee.
Mayor, I'll be one of them.
I'd be willing to serve on a committee.
Okay.
Boom. Wayne squared.
Yeah, that's adorable.
Wayne squared.
Wayne squared.
So the other thing that I will throw out, Kelly and I have talked about the likelihood of legislation coming through. So we are going to be watching the state agenda for what might be coming. I think if we were in a place where we were at least making progress, it might put us in a good place to seek some state grant funding. And being prepared for that and kind of first in line might be really beneficial to our community. So I think working through this over the next several months as the legislature meets and we start seeing what that conversation is, we could be in a place where we have counselors who can go and testify on a potential bill, seeking additional funds, for example, for funding local opportunities, because the funding is going to be an issue. And there's both the capital costs for building something, and then there's the ongoing operating costs. Whether you have a 501c3 or volunteers, there are costs associated with that. It is a people-intensive program, so I think we want to be.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just suggest on the committee, I mean, I don't think it has to be appointed tonight. Our recommendation was just that we pursue having a committee. And I don't know how you want to, appointing the committees, if I remember correctly from the charter, is the mayor. And I know that Chief Stevenson has already made a couple of suggestions as to who might be on that committee. So and how many, and, I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to be contacting the city saying, I'd like to be on this committee. So, I'm not exactly sure how you want to go about figuring that out, either with the chief and maybe with our office, or just appointing, however you want to do it. It's kind of your prerogative.
Yeah, I'd like to take the next month and then bring it back to council next council meeting in February, and then bring back what we've come up with as far as how we think that the committee should look, and get members and people on it. I think that would be fine. It's not a rush, but it's something that we want to get done and have ready to go.
Okay.
Mayor, I don't want to be on the committee. I just want to go to Medford.
You and Rebecca can drive. Any other discussion? And thank you, Kim and Chief, for both your input on that. It's really important, and we appreciate that, especially the things about not wanting to bring people in from other states because we have such a cool program. That's key. And also not creating a thing where we can't enforce it and where we can't actually go in there and do the things we need to do. So those are two top things for me, but I just want to see us doing something in this direction. So I think this is good. And I'll come back next meeting with a committee and kind of ideas.
And I was just going to say, as far as them wanting people to come down, they don't care how many people. We can come down in groups. We can go down a couple different times. They've had people from other states and other cities come across, and their finance department, everybody's been involved in it, and they understand, and they're really proud of it. So They've pretty much, and they even have a full-time grant writer, and they gave me a bunch of names of different places too where we could actually get some funding. So I have that ready for whoever is going to take that on.
Excellent.
Not me.
I think it sounds like a police captain.
Thanks.
All right. Any other discussion? 8:20. We'll move on to number 5. Declaring vacant the Ward 2 City Council seat held by Karen Stouter, Councilor. Karen, would you like to address council?
Yes, I would. So earlier, or at the end of December, I regretfully had to submit my resignation letter. So I just like to read it so I don't mess anything up. So it is with, it was sent to you, Mayor, and our interim city manager, Nancy Brewer. So it is with great regret that I'm writing to inform you the need to resign my position as City Councilor of Ward 2, tentatively effective March 10th of 2021. My partner and I are moving out of the area, and I will no longer meet the resident requirement of serving as councilor for the City of Lebanon. Thank you, Mayor, for all the support you have given me during my tenure. I would also like to thank each of my fellow council members. It has been a pleasure and an honor to work with each of you and Mayor. I am proud of what we have accomplished over the past years. We all work cohesively as a team with only the best interests of our city and the citizens of Lebanon in mind. I have no doubt that you will continue to put the needs of our community first. Interim City Manager Brewer, I know we have not had the opportunity to work together here in Lebanon long, but I was extremely fortunate to work with you in Corvallis. Your leadership skills are exceptional, and I know the City of Lebanon is in great hands. Additionally, I would like to thank each of the city directors, Kelly Hart, Ron Whitlatch, Jason Williams, Matt Apkin, Kendra Antilli, Angela Soulsby, Brent Hurst, and Kendra Oliver. Also the city recorder, Kim Schaefer, and the chief of police, Frank Stevenson. You all do such an amazing job. When I first came on board, you all welcomed me to the team and brought me up to speed by meeting with me and educating me of what each of your departments are responsible for. Lastly, I would like to thank my constituents for believing in me and electing me to serve on your behalf. So it's just the next phase sort of retirement. We're moving to Central Oregon where we get lots and lots and lots of sun. And it's just something we've been wanting to do. And it was really very, very difficult for me to make this decision. I signed on for 4 years and I wanted to complete 4 years, but it's just the timing right now. It's just the perfect time for us to sell our house and to make the move. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Karen. And you know, it's been a joy getting to know you and work, and I'm really ticked off that you're going, because you've been a great counselor and you work so great with everybody and the community, and you really care about what you're doing. And I know that carried over in your police work too. Thank you for everything you've done for us. We are going to miss you.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset because I'm her ward mate, and she got me all used to having just a great cooperative ward mate that had good experience in police work and dealing with people. I'm very cooperative and very responsive, blah, blah, blah. So I'm pretty mad about it. And I wanted that on the record. We're going to miss it.
Noted. Well noted.
If you lost her ward mate instead, I would have gladly approved that. So thank you, Karen. We appreciate what you've done for the city and your service. It was awesome. And I've known you a long time, and it was fun to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
I agree, Karen. It was great working with you. I'm going to miss you. It was nice to have a Beavers fan on council.
Oh, there's that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Karen, and good luck in your adventures. And it'll be nice working with you for at least another couple months. Okay, with that, we, let's see, hold on one second here. Yeah, with that, we have to do a resolution to declare the seat open. And then at that point, we can discuss how we want to move forward with that. So at this point, if you've seen it's in your packet, there is a resolution that has been written up, and we'll have the city attorney read the title of the resolution.
It is with very heavy heart that I present Resolution 2021-01, a resolution authorizing the city of Lebanon to declare vacant the Ward 2 City Council seat held by Councilor Karen Souders. I pronounced it wrong every single time, right?
No, that was perfect.
No, I finally got it.
You did.
Move for approval.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2021-01. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that has passed, and that position is now vacant, or will be vacant. And at this point, what I'd like to do is get feedback from council on how we'd like to go forward. Looking at the way we did it the last time, we held interviews, and it's going to be a little different, obviously, this time. But I think we put out for 2 weeks. We got interested parties that would be interested in doing that. I think we had 5 or 6 applicants that came. We interviewed them, and then we chose one of the candidates. So that's my feeling. That's the way we went forward last time, and I think it worked very well. That was where Robert was chosen as a successor.
I was thinking that was spelled out. It's not spelled out in the charter how we deal with council opening. Well, I liked the process of opening it and having people apply and having us talk to them and take a vote. That's my
is 2 weeks enough?
Yeah, I was gonna say 2 weeks is what we did last time. Is 2 weeks not? You guys don't think it's enough, or? I think it's. I mean,
I think it might not be enough, to be honest.
What's that?
I think it's fine. Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, that's normally what we do on committees and things like that. We do a couple weeks.
But COVID.
What, you can't use your computer?
No.
Well, I know you can't, but other people can.
Mayor, this is Kim. There's a draft schedule in the packet that Nancy and I sort of worked out for deadline for receiving applications, giving time for feedback for
Oh, that's okay.
questions for
Got
the
it.
interviews and interviewing.
I forgot that was there. Sorry.
Oh, look at that. It's 4 weeks.
Yeah. I'll be darned.
Thank you, Kim.
4 weeks.
Okay.
There's time.
And we got questions, and we can look at that later.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kim. And so it looks like we've already got it all spelled out. Is everybody okay with that? I know Jason is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so with that, we will go ahead and staff can prepare that, and we will start getting ready, go for a 4-week announcement of it, and then interviews. We'll coordinate that. Is that good direction, Nancy? Is that okay?
That is good direction, and I do think the fact that we have only a weekly newspaper does play into that needing to give a little longer. So I don't think
Sure.
we'll see a Lebanon Express article until next week. It just as another public information mechanism. So
Okay. All righty. Anything else on that? Seeing none, we'll have the city manager's report. Nancy.
thank you. I'm going to do all things COVID today, not exactly, but close. We have been notified by the state that since the federal government extended and did another bailout package, our CRF dollars that expired 12/30 have been extended into 2021. We will be filing reimbursement, I think, next week, and ought to, at that point, know how much of our original grant we still have remaining. And then we'll start brainstorming about what's best use for those funds. Matt and I will be talking about when to start doing water lockoffs again. I think we are both feeling not inclined to start that as long as we are at extreme risk, but at some point we do need to get people locked off. We are seeing a growing number of customers with past due accounts. And frankly, I would say Matt and I were both very disappointed in the small number of people who took advantage of the grant program for help with utility bills. We put $100,000 out, great relationship with Central Willamette Credit Union. They automated things and made it super, super easy. And we only had 12 people who applied who completed the paperwork and made that happen. So very disappointed in that. So we will look at what some alternatives are once we know how much we've got remaining. Did send a note today to the Lynn County Health Department and put out that we would be really happy to use our senior center as a vaccination location for Lebanon, and that it's got a lot of advantages, parking, access. We've got new HVAC in that big room, so ventilation is good. You can put people in one door, out another. The ability to kind of hive that large room off into smaller areas if we needed to do that. Just trying to make that space available, as the governor has said, a wider vaccine distribution beginning on the 23rd of January. I'd love to have it here. I'd love to be able to make it available and get word to people in town who want to know, when can I get a shot? So we're trying to get to there. A couple of kudos to shout out from me. Alicia Rogers, our economic development catalyst, and Kelly Hart worked with Matt Apkin in finance and Sharon Hales, who does our accounts payable. In 2 weeks, we got application forms out and permits for the downtown businesses, all of the businesses in town that are closed due to the extreme risk category. We sent out 37 $5,000 grants, $185,000 in a 2-week time period. It was rapid turnaround. We had some really awesome work from people. I think Sharon was here on New Year's Eve, getting checks in the mail on New Year's Eve out the door. So, but we were able to get money into the hands of businesses, which was important. And then a second big shout out for the wastewater treatment plant. So I'm going to name names here. We all know Jason Williams, Jim Allred, Randy Swank, Eddie Barnes, and Monty Norris work on our wastewater treatment plant. Over the last several months, they have taken that plant from barely chugging along to where a couple of weeks ago we handled a 17.7 million gallon a day flow through that plant. We did not overflow to the river. Portland did, but we did not. And I think it's just testimony to some amazing work they have done in terms of changing pumps, changing valves, cleaning out the system, putting things back to rights that needed to be put back. And I wanted to give them that acknowledgement because that is an amazing task and it really kept us out of trouble. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Next up, items from council. Rebecca.
I would piggyback on what Nancy was just talking about on something else that Kelly and Alicia did, which was to get a PPE grant for the businesses. And that's being stored by the city. And the city staff has been great about, the chamber is helping to distribute that to businesses. And I really thought, I don't think there's a lot of need still in the community. And since we put it out, we have been bombarded. We're going through the PPE. Really, it was a much greater need still for businesses than I had anticipated. So thank you guys for that, and thank the city for being so great about helping us haul that out and fill up the chamber van time after time.
And I'm going to throw a shout out, and she's going to really be tweaked at me, but that's just the way it goes. Rebecca did a really, really intense job on getting checks out to businesses. And thank you for doing that. And there's a lot of money that went out to businesses, and she was responsible for getting that to those people and did a lot of work. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
I do. Well, thank you. But really, the partnership is between the Albany Chamber, the Lebanon Chamber, and the Lynn County. And so we did 40 businesses in Lebanon to the tune of $10,000 each. So that was $400,000. And then the county just this week issued a third check to those businesses for an additional $3,000. So another 120,000 that came to Lebanon. So it has been a lot of work, but we are trying to funnel as much grant money as we can to businesses. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. I have two things here. We've got an opening for the Council of Governments Transportation Committee, and I need a volunteer for the Transportation Committee for the Council of Governments. Is there someone that would like to serve on that for this next year? Wayne
Well,
Dykstra, I
already
think
on
that
it.
would be an awesome thing for you.
I just volunteered for one committee.
Well, the councils of government, I think that meets monthly. So is there anyone else that is interested?
Wayne, you're already on it?
But I go off.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the board.
Yeah.
I'm committed out of work, so.
Okay. So
if Karen volunteers, does it automatically go to a replacement?
So if I get no volunteer, then I will make an assignment at some point in time. So we'll move on. The SDC committee that Karen was on, which is coming up. I don't think that's going to have a ton of meetings, is it, Nancy?
No, it should not have a ton of meetings.
Okay, and that's
it should be pretty short.
and that's re-examining our SDC funds and those things. And we need somebody on that committee.
I'm already on that committee, so it's not me.
Oh, well, okay. And Rebecca would like
I'll
to
do it.
Okay, thank you,
I'll
Rebecca. Awesome, thank you. We still have the transportation committee open. Anybody willing to try that? Wayne Dykstra, I mean, you're brand new. You should be hopping on committees.
Yeah, right. Let me just ease into this, okay?
Okay. Okay, so you'll be on the transportation committee and the homeless committee. Excellent. Very, very good.
I'm glad you redefined that term.
Thank you. Okay, and we need to move on. Items from the public or press. We don't have any public. Is there anybody in the press that has any questions? I don't think we have anybody on, do we?
No, we don't. Not from the press.
Okay, so we don't have anybody from the press. So next scheduled council meetings, February 10th, 6 p.m. And Rebecca, don't get excited. You can't go to bed yet because coming up is the executive session and we'll have the city attorney read the statement on the executive session.
Oh, we're gonna go straight into it? Got it.
Unless there's an objection and anybody wants a break, because I just want to get this over with, go through it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just so we know when to stop recording and stop the YouTube stream. So we'll need about a 1-minute transition there once we go out. So.
Okay. At that point, then I'll adjourn our regular session and then let's take, because it sounds like people are getting a little bit antsy, take a 5-minute break and then we'll have you guys be able to get the broadcast taken care of. And then we'll come back in 5 minutes.